Okay, we're connecting. It's broadcasting. Ask for the remote back. Stacy, we're on.
All right. Ooh. I still need connection, and I'm so excited that everyone's here.
No, we're
I
not
need
on
to get access.
Stacy, we are
Just us.
ask for control. Ask for control.
I am.
Okay.
And we're on slide 2, not slide 1.
Exactly. Very good.
Okay.
All right. All right. Please forgive me. We have pushing the button. It's not working. Very good. All right. Well, I want to welcome everyone this evening to Managing Your Home Through the COVID-19 Pandemic. Tips for parents and educators. We are so excited to have all of you joining us this evening. This webinar is going to be presented by Professor Brown and Dr. Francine Edwards. To get the most out of this webinar, we ask that you keep your microphones on mute. You have the option to submit questions via the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. That will be answered at the end of this presentation. If we have any technical difficulties, we will shut the webinar down, continue recording, and send you the recording at the end. Our presenters have compiled a short content presentation that they want to go over, and we'll take questions, as I stated earlier, in the end of the presentation. A quick introduction to our presenters. I'm excited to introduce to you Professor Tanya Brown. Tanya M. Brown is a cross-disciplinary educator with over 23 years of teaching experience, who started her teaching career as a high school teacher in English at her alma mater, St. John College High School in Washington, D.C. Tanya is an associate professor in the English department, Humanities, Visual, and Performing Arts department at Baltimore City Community College, and is an adjunct professor of the psychology at Southern New Hampshire. Additionally, Tanya is the founder of Professor Brown LLC, which is a company that provides women's empowerment conferences, professional development training, consulting, and professional speaking services.
Good evening, everybody.
Next, we have Dr. Francine Edwards. Edwards has more than 20 years of experience in the television and public affairs industries. Edwards is the current Dean of the College of Humanities, Education, and Social Sciences at Delaware State University. Today's focus is creating space for work learning. And I want to move this slide so that you can follow along with what I'm saying here. Creating space for work and learning, using this time to teach soft skills, tips for educators, K-12 and higher ed, and self-care tips. At this moment, I'm going to pass it off to Francine so we can get things started.
All right, all right. Next slide, please. Thank you, thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone who signed up. This is a really unique experience that's happening right now. The three of us were on BET a long time ago, and we did live television. This is our first time in about 30 years that we've done anything like this. So this is a really great opportunity for us. And just to give you some quick background, Tanya and I were supposed to present at the Maryland Distance Learning Association's conference this spring, and we're going to be presenting on some online learning tools and teaching, culturally competent teaching. And obviously this happened. And Tanya called one day and said, hey, either we should try to present those presentations that we created for the conference, or let's do something different. And this was born. And so we're so excited that everyone's decided to participate and that everyone's here with us. And so hopefully as professionals and as parents and wives of first responders and educators, we can share some insight that will help get you through the rest of our COVID-19 situation that we're all in. And so in terms of creating space for work, the technological revolution kind of ushered in the idea of virtual workforces. And a lot of us are actually in jobs where we have the luxury of working at home a couple days a week. But none of us ever imagined being in a situation like this where we have been forced to join this revolution. And so if you're like my family, when we sent some of our kids off to college, the expectation was that we would convert that space into a nice relaxation space. Well, here we are, and that space has now become our telework office. And what is our home office is now the Edwards Academy, where our kids do their homeschooling every day. And so how do we create a space at home if we don't already have one, and if we're still maintaining some common areas in our home that spaces for fellowship? For some of you who have settled in by now, it's great, but there are probably a lot of us who haven't settled in, and we're still grabbing workspace here and there, wherever we can find that space. And so because we don't know how long we'll be in this period where we're working, teaching, and learning from home, we're going to share some tips. So point one, organize your workspace. This is the first and the foremost priority, because we're working from home and we have got to do a number of things in terms of maintaining that level of professionalism, ensuring that we can still be creative at home and connect with our team members in a very attentive way, and that we have space that enables us to use technology in the maximum of ways. And so we chose to actually move our office upstairs because there's a router upstairs, and to kind of give us a barrier or some distance between ourselves and our children as we went to work every day, as we go to work every day. Another thing that you should think about is contacting your service provider. A lot of service providers are offering discounts because they know the load of people using Wi-Fi has increased. So investigate that, and also ask questions about your security, because I think it's even more important now that we have our children working from home on devices. The next thing I would offer is called a 3-zone for efficiency. So the 3-zone is made up of your primary work zone, your secondary work zone, and that tertiary work zone. And so in that primary work zone, you have all of those things that you use on and on throughout the day: your cell phone, flash drives, all those things that your go-to items. If some of us were lucky enough to be able to bring some items home from work, those items are in that space as well. The secondary work zone includes supplies and some things that you need from time to time. These aren't things that you use every single minute of the day, but as long as they're reachable, because you don't want to have to get up and move around. And then that tertiary space is maybe a shelf in the room that has some items that you may use once or twice a week. And so if anyone from DSU is on the webinar, you know that in my primary and in my secondary work zone, I have snacks. And so that's not any different here at home. I have a huge canister of snacks that I keep close to me in case I need a snack, because I find that I am in here for a long period of time. And thanks to my good friend, Professor Brown, I make sure that there's a balance of healthy snacks. And I try to eat a lot of fresh fruits and incorporate that.
I didn't see any fresh fruits in that container.
Not in that container, but I did have some fruit today. But I share my snack jar to say you have to try to make your home office as conducive and to have it mirror your work office as closely as possible, so that you're comfortable and so that you're as productive as you can be. The next thing I would offer is set the tone. And so let me preface this section by saying, even though you do everything in your power to set the tone, these tips are not fail-proof. I shared on Facebook a few weeks ago how I put a sign on the door, and I said to myself, for what? Because people keep barging in. And so I had to take more drastic measures, and I had to start locking the door when I would come down the hall to do work. And so I think both our nonverbal and our verbal communication helps to set the tone. And for those of us who have kids at home or who are working with a spouse or a partner at home, it helps to set the tone that what we're actually doing down the hall or in a home office, or even if we're still at the dining room table, is what we do every day to generate our income. It is our job, it is our career. And so it needs to be some respect that goes along with that. Another thing that I would say in terms of setting that tone is to get dressed every day. I'm actually dressed from the waist up. I have on my comfy sweats and some, Adidas slides because it's comfortable. But, I get up every day, I put on my makeup, I do my hair, and that sends a message to everyone in my family that I am going to work, and people take me seriously, and kids give us quiet time when we need it. For the most part, like I said, it's not perfect, but I think it's important to set that tone. I would also say be flexible. Productivity is going to change based on the expectations that your supervisors are giving you or that team members give you. So be flexible, Set daily goals to track your progress and have conversations with your supervisors about tracking these daily goals. And make sure that you break away from work. One of the things that I learned from a good friend, Aisha Brown, who does work from home, she shared with me that you have to be very intentional about shutting off work if you're working from home. Most of us will work 10 to 12 hours. So you have to be very intentional, and you have to break away and make that commitment to shut work off when you shut it off. And so now we're in a space where we're not only shutting off teleworking, but we're managing how our kids balance their time as well. And so these are just a few tips as we continue in this new normal. And like I said, it's not fail-proof. It's not one size fits all. But if you've been managing by sitting in the living room or sitting in the dining room table, I would encourage you to look around your house and see where you can find some dedicated space. A few days ago, I watched a news story about a couple who live in an apartment, and they actually put up a partition to create a dedicated workspace. And so I think that's really important. We're finding that families are resilient. They are making it work. And so it's important to kind of listen to your inner voice and be realistic about making those adjustments and how you all engage as you work from home, you school from home, you teach from home, you learn from home, so that you can all optimize your outcomes and use the resources that you have at home. Next slide, please. Thank you. I love this little guy on this slide. So in terms of creating space for work, like I said, we gave Tyler and Josh our home office. And I think one of the things that we thought about when we wanted to create a space for them to work in is that our child has some special needs. We had to make sure that he wasn't taking fidgets to his homeschool area. The same way I check his backpack when he would go to school is the same way I now check the pockets of his hoodies or his sweatpants to make sure he doesn't have fidgets, because we want to make sure that that space is conducive for learning. And think about it, there are 55 million students that are being, homeschooled, that are engaged in remote learning as a result of COVID-19. And so this isn't including our college students. And so we have to look at the key differences in terms of creating those spaces for our students to learn and for us to be able to have some contact with our students, because now we're responsible for monitoring and navigating this remote learning space for them. So like I said, we try to limit the distractions that Tyler and Josh have. We set time limits. And so the school districts that our kids are in have been really good at helping to set time limits to make sure that the kids aren't given too much homework, so that they're not online too much, sending emails and encouraging us to have family time, to exercise, to engage with peers in extracurricular activities. Sporting teams are having visits and lessons and practices on Zoom. My daughter has music lessons. We just got an email about a Girl Scout webinar. So there's the importance or the need to find that same balance for your children that you would find for yourselves. Allow your students to, bring their own creativity into the space, as long as it's not distracting. As you can see, the other picture is a 4-year-old from Atlanta. It was a news story that I read online, and he chose this as his study space. You know your kids best. You know what's going to help your kids focus. You know what's going to give your kids some peace and calm in this uncertain space. So if it is the bathroom and you can spare it, let that be the space. I'm all for it. But giving them that ability to be a little creative. So what we did with Josh, he has some pictures up there, and he has like this DSU seat cushion that he put up there. And Tyler has a basketball and a few other things, but they made the space their own. And the teachers are really great too. You can wear your hoodie while you're on Zoom. You can have a blanket if you need to. So these are some things that I think that we have to do differently, because our students are learning differently in this new normal. Monitor the technology and gaming landscape. So now we have to do this even more than we did before, because now they're at home. Some kids are using school issue devices. Some are using personal devices. We try to have a balance because we can monitor the personal devices. And we've tried to set them up in a space that's easy for us to check in. So their devices face outwards. So if we're walking through a room, we can see what's up on the screen, so they can't do the quick switcheroo. I think that's important. And we want to make sure that you're on the school websites and not gaming or chatting with friends. With regard to our high school students and our college students, I think that we have to handle them differently. These students are dealing with a lot more than probably any of us could ever imagine. Any of us who were able to go to prom, have a commencement or a graduation. And so their prom is being taken away. The last years of being with friends that they've known for 4 years is gone. And for some of our kids, their independence has been stolen. And you're a college kid who's now back at home. And so you don't want to helicopter your high school or your college students, but your messaging to them should center around you being there to support them, you being there to encourage their learning in this new space. And I would say that older students, in terms of choosing that space, they may be more comfortable in their bedrooms. We, prior to this, had a rule that you couldn't do homework in your bedroom because God knows what would be going on. But for your older students, that may be the space. But then you have to communicate. What are some expectations? Do you allow them to play some music in the background while they're studying? Is the door open when they're engaging in academics? That's a conversation, and you guys agree on some rules. And I think it's important that you encourage your older students to come to you. That, again, that becomes your constant message for them. Again, these are not solutions that are going to work for every family. And we're dealing with a very isolating experience as a whole, a very uncertain, challenging experience. So I would also say, consider having family meetings, especially during that downtime, and give your children an opportunity to talk about their level of stress, give them opportunities to have remote time with their friends, encourage them to do those things, that healthy online interaction, not just gaming. And as we do this together, support them in their learning. They will support you as you go to work. And one thing that I think everyone in the house needs to remember is that there's a level of accountability. Our jobs are holding us accountable for working 8 hours a day from home and producing and delivering just as we would if we were going to the office every day. The same is true for our students. The teachers have a demand and an expectation for work to be done, for there to be participation, and for there to be some independence in terms of that learning. And so as best as we can, we want to model that in our homes. And so with all of this schedule and the busy work that we have to do, I would offer the next slide, which is using this time to teach them soft skills. So this has been one of those things that I don't think would have happened in our house if it weren't for us experiencing the pandemic. So we've had an opportunity for our daughter to learn to love cooking. She is one in the past who would run from the kitchen. We would say that this was a shared activity. She didn't want to partake. I think it was the fear of having to clean up and wash dishes. And a few of my sorority sisters, we were joking back and forth last night on Facebook saying how our daughters have really taken cooking and they're doing a great job, but they need to work on the cleaning part. Well, this is an opportunity to teach those soft skills. In the past, we never let the kids do things as simple as loading the dishwasher. That's something that we've taught Josh. Tyler is now helping more with the laundry. Tyler, she's been on the riding mower a few times, but that's something that she likes to do. She's helping out with yard work. So this is a great opportunity to teach our kids some soft skills and to really, spend some quality time with them. Our lives, for the most part, as parents, will probably be spent going to work, coming home, doing a little homework, doing a little extracurricular, sports, band, drama, theater, whatever, and bring them home, feed them, rinse, wash, repeat, do it again till the weekend comes. And then there's competitions and, other things that consume our weekends. And I would encourage folks to value this time. Look at this time as something that's extremely sacred, a time that we hope we never get back in this way, but a time that is nonetheless valuable. And try to make the best of some of those moments where we're not working, where we're not doing schoolwork, where we're not engaged in those mandatory type of ways that we normally would be engaged in outside of the home. And one more thing before I turn it over to Professor Brown. One thing that we've done is we started practicing some healthy distance within the house. And so we all take me time breaks. And when I say we take me time breaks as a family, it's your opportunity to be alone, be by yourself. And there's only one caveat. is that there's no technology. We read a book, you sit outside and just take in some clean air, you take a nap even, you just do something that, you know, allows you to wind down and disconnect for a little bit. I think this is important as we all try to navigate this new space, and we're spending a lot of time together. We're spending a lot of time to. So if we're able to focus on ourselves and collectively as a team, our hashtag is hashtag Team Edwards. If we're able to focus as a team and get things done together, I think that we'll be able to look back on this time and see a lot more benefits than we do the fear and anxiety. And so Professor Brown is going to talk in greater detail about some self-care and some other things and some other tips. So take it away.
Good evening, everybody. As Dr. Edwards and Stacy said, we really thank you for spending some time with us this evening. This webinar really came out of a very interesting space. About 2 weeks into the pandemic, I was sitting in my kitchen and I became overwhelmed about how I would balance my new normal. So I called Dr. Edwards and I was like, listen, you know, I do not believe in staying down long. Let's redirect some of the negative energy and let's figure out how we can serve and give back. So she knew that we both have been teaching online for about 17, 18 years. I earned my second master's degree 100% online. And so we decided that we would create a series of webinars that would be dedicated to working professionals who are now having to work 100% online, as well as parents who are having the challenge of working online, as well as teaching their children. So thank you again for being here. And I see that I'm looking down at the number of participants. If you're able and you know how to do so, jump over to the chat and just let us know where you're from, what city are you from, and if you are a parent, an educator, you're working online, a friend, you found us on Facebook, you just wanted to log in and join us. But we want to know where you're from, and we just want to hear from you along the way before we transition at the end to the question and answer. So the tips for parents really start off with what we know as educators and even parents. It's really important that we have structure. And structure that includes consistency, breaks, and age-appropriate independence. And you know your kids best, and so you're the ones who can determine how much independence that they can handle and how much independence that they need. Also, it's very important, particularly for those parents who have children in the K through 12 environment, to continue to collaborate with teachers and the school counselors by phone, email, and Zoom, the same way that you would if your child was going to school in person. And this is because the teachers may have some resources that they can share with you. You may be having some challenges that they can help you with. And they can also encourage you to, if needed, collaborate with other parents. Be creative in using your resources. We found some dynamic resources when we were preparing for this webinar: Google Arts and Culture, Storybird, which is a website that allows you as the parent to teach your children how to write or supplement their writing. Let's go back to the previous slide, please. And Story Online is a wonderful website for younger children where actors are reading picture books aloud. And the next bullet, I think, kind of speaks to the need to make sure that we're beginning to open up the conversation about emotional well-being. What is the attendance policy? Because being in a remote environment doesn't mean that we have to show up every day. Every day is not a good day. If we're in this pandemic, as long as we think that we're going to be in it, as long as the Baltimore Sun says that we're going to be in it, it's likely that children are going to have a sick day, or they're just not feeling it today. So as the parent, proactively reach out and find out, what is the policy if my child is unable to attend class remotely today? Then lastly, create a calendar because many children are oftentimes visual learners. And even if they're not visual learners, the visual helps them to have a sense of accountability. I actually have a calendar that I use for exercising. And when I finish, I'll write 30-minute strength training today, 45-minute spin cycle class. And so even though I'm writing it on the back end, I like to be able to go back and track how many days last week did I exercise. Now, my colleague is on here, Angela Don from Baltimore City Community College. She would tell me to map it out in advance. That's what she tells my students when she teaches them time management. But honestly, you all, I'm just not there yet.
Professor Brown, can I ask you a real quick question?
Sure.
I know that we chatted about this,
Yes.
as we're giving tips for parents. So, I think the second week of the pandemic, I wrote this post, but I wanted to get your feedback as someone who has a background in psychology. And a lot of our students have shared that, our college students have shared that they've come home, they've been independent for 2-3 years, they've come home as a result of this, and their parents are now parenting them as if this is the high school senior. So what can be done in terms of that parent-young adult relationship to make living together once again conducive and supportive? And what should parents know about what's going on in the heads of their college kids and kind of vice versa?
So I think the transition back home after living independently, whether you're coming home for the summer after your first year in college or your first winter break, is definitely a challenge, because when you are in college, you're making the rules, right? If you're at an institution where you have a curfew, then you abide by the curfew. But some schools may be more liberal. So I think it's important to really start the process by, one, becoming self-aware. What's going on with me as the parent? Am I anxious? Am I nervous about what does this all mean? After all, I paid tuition, I paid room and board, I paid for a meal plan, and now my child is back on, and I'm really not even clear about what this online means. Those of us who've been teaching in an online platform for decades now realize that there's still a stigma of online education. So it's very important to, as a parent, just really stop for a moment, look within and say, am I being a helicopter mom or dad because of my own anxiety? And then really to open up the dialogue, because the college student is experiencing some grief, some loss of independence, and so are the parents, but the parents were home living their normal, and the college student's life was completely disrupted prematurely, bringing them back home into a space and for an unknown period of time. So I think it's really, to answer your question, we need to be compassionate, we need to communicate, and we need to be aware of our own emotions and what we might be projecting onto our college age students.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. So here's a hypothetical schedule, and I come out of a platform, is the same that Dr. Edwards says, is that this is not a one size fits all. But what I really like about this schedule is if we go down to the bottom, well, first of all, throughout the whole schedule, we see a balance between, one, getting up, showering, dressing, having breakfast. So we're honoring the new environment. So even though Dr. Edwards has on her comfy sweats, right, she's still dressing the part. She's prepared for work today. And so however the child does it, we're not suggesting that if a kid wears a uniform to school, they have to necessarily wear a uniform now. But the point is that when we dress up and when we show up in our Sunday's best, whatever that looks like for each individual, we feel better, we perform better. And so that's first and foremost in both of these examples, for the preschool/kindergarten student, the elementary school kid. And then throughout, there's a balance between doing work, going out and getting some fresh air. Now, we understand that there may be some restrictions on how far we can go outside, but the key here is to have balance. And when we go down to the end of the day, we see that we're transitioning out of this structured time to calming down, to having yoga, to, transitioning to listening to music to begin to cut off the workday. The greatest challenges that I know I have working in this new environment is that I don't always shut off the way that I should. But I think that it's important for our children to really begin to make that switch to family time, dinner time, downtime, so that they can do it all again today. And I'm certainly striving to do better with incorporating breaks in the day and making that downtime happen every day in the early evening.
Is that me? All right, so some tips for higher education. So I think that considering how we had to make this transition, I have to be a little personal here. Delaware State University was ahead of the curve. So we started making the transition to remote learning probably almost 2 weeks prior to when most of the country started shutting down. So us being able to bring different teams together and have conversations around what we needed to do, how we could get textbook materials integrated in Blackboard, which is our learning management system, working with our IT folks, working with our administrators. We rocked, we killed it, I have to say that. And if it wasn't for everyone's level of competency and everyone's focus on how we could continue to educate our students, I don't think the transition would have been this smooth. And what's also encouraging as an educator is that every day along the way, we're learning something new. We're figuring out a new way to use technology to integrate things. We're sharing tips among faculty and peers. We're brainstorming. And so this migration, although it was forced on us, opens the door for a lot of innovation for educators across this country. And so most of us have made the transition, but we still got a ways to go. One thing that we know for sure is when our semesters are going to end. We don't know when the shelter in place is going to end. And so consider some of these tips. Front load the remainder of your semester. Get that content up. Make sure that your exams are up and that you're doing some exams that can actually self-grade. Use some apps that have reminder features on them. Use calendars. I know a lot of kids use Remind in both the K-12 and the college environment, and because kids are connected to their cell phones, it is a good way to connect with your it's a good way to connect with your students and to be able to make sure they're getting information, they're getting updates. Because as I said earlier, this is a really dynamic process. Things are changing. Leverage the campus support that you have. Again, our IT folks, our help desk people, our distance learning team, very knowledgeable about the online space to begin with. And so they helped to make the transition. A week before we launched, our distance education folks were doing workshops and webinars to help us get prepared to migrate everything online. And so if you have a distance learning team, don't hesitate to ask them questions. Most on college campuses are available 24 hours for students and faculty. Develop a schedule for grading and doing assignments. Again, you're gonna find yourself in front of your computer, not just doing your academic work, but all the meetings that you physically would have on campus are now on Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams. So get a schedule in place. Share those innovative tips. Share that creativity with your colleagues. Brainstorm. In moments of frustration, let's be real, because there are going to be moments of frustration. Talk to folks in the academic environment and bounce things off of them. I would definitely say that as educators, you need to have a space where you can decompress, and you also at the same time need to balance that empathy with students who are making the transition and who are struggling with being away from friends, being away from educators that they've grown to have relationships with, making sure that there's a balance. And then take advantage of free webinars. And this is both for faculty and students. Within the last week, I've gotten emails about webinars. There's an organization called Made in New York They are doing a webinar for theater and acting majors, folks who want to break into Broadway. And then a few days later, there's a webinar for people who want to break into the music industry. I just got a link from Dr. Marcia Taylor at DSU about an organization that's doing their entire conference, like a 4-day conference online, and it's entirely free. So if you can incorporate some of these things into your class, it's important, it's good. And one of the reasons why I would strongly encourage faculty to do this is because you're able to connect with students in a different way. The rigor of the online space is probably not something they're comfortable with, but if they can go to a webinar, and in some instances, you're learning from industry professionals and industry insiders. And in one of the cases, there's a bunch of DSU alumni that are going to be a part of this online conference. You're actually getting an experience that's related to your field. And so it changes your way of thinking. It gives you something new and something innovative and creative to look forward to. So again, we've got to really rethink how we deliver education in terms of the higher education space. This is all new to everybody in terms of how we're having to do that. But being able to have some takeaways that we can use in the coming semesters is another way of looking at this. The semesters that are ahead of us are going to be so great, and they're going to be so mixed multimedia wise that students are going to clamor for this type of education. So I would encourage faculty, don't be frustrated, just like I would encourage students. Be innovative, use your research sources, and as educators, use this as an opportunity for us to actually learn and grow and build our own brands. And there's tons of research that's going to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic and the use of digital technologies, etc. So I'm excited about it. The next slide. All right, so we tried to do something a little fun here before we transition to talk about self-care. So those of you who have cell phones, you can actually hold your phone up to your screen and you can take a picture of the QR code and take the survey. If you are working from a laptop or another device, you can go to menti.com and then put in a code and then take the quick survey. And the survey says, what is your current self-care practice? So I'm going to take the survey too. So we'll give it a couple seconds. Tanya, I don't have you here to spell check my responses.
Oh, I'm messing up too.
Tanya proofreads all of my work.
This needs to have a built-in spell checker.
Oh, that's good. All right, so Ms. Hill, if I could have the screen back so that I can pop up the survey results. Let's see what's going on in here.
And the reality is that we oftentimes do not think about our self-care practices intentionally. It may not be a daily part of our vocabulary or routine, but certainly something that we need to be embracing during these times.
Have we shared, does everyone see the survey results?
We do.
Okay, there we go.
So what do we have, Dr. Edwards?
Well, it looks like, I guess when we're looking at the word cloud, it looks like prayer is the top. Sleep is on there. I see reading. I have done more reading. I like walking in the neighborhood. I will say that when we first moved here, that used to be a part of our regimen. We would walk as a family, and then all of a sudden when the kids started doing sports and more activities, it was something we stopped until about 4 weeks ago. So it seems like a lot of folks do a lot of different things in terms of their self-care, and they're very intentional. I even like watching TV, whoever put that up. Sometimes I watch TV as one of those things to just kind of like decompress. And I watch a network called MeTV, so it's all the TV shows from like back in the day. So it's just, it's a way for me to relax. So I think it's important, and Dr. Brown, Professor Brown will share some more about self-care. Ms. Hill, you can get the screen back when you're ready.
Okay, you don't want to take it to the next one? Go to the next.
I sure will. I will advance to the next one.
Awesome.
I will go back here, advance. Here we go. Okay, I think I've advanced it. Uh-oh, here
Perfect.
we go.
Yes.
You can add it back.
So when we begin to have the discussion about self-care, and particularly during a pandemic, the first pillar is to embrace knowledge and health literacy. But we don't want to do this by having CNN or MSNBC overload. We need going to the sound and vetted websites that can give us knowledge and information about how we should be functioning during this time. Johns Hopkins has developed a COVID-19 website that we're going to send you the link to the website after this webinar. And it's so detailed that it tells you even what you need to do when you have to go to the doctor to see if your primary care physicians are offering telemedicine sessions, what would happen if you have to go in. There's a checker to see if you're even having any symptoms of COVID-19. So we just want to be very knowledgeable in this time and seek knowledge from vetted and sound resources. And for our mental health and well-being, you know, the way that I really approach this as a cross-disciplinary educator is that the first step is really self-awareness. So for example, when I shared 2 weeks ago, I began to feel very overwhelmed. I knew that if I stayed in that emotional state, it wasn't going to go well for me. So I began to access my relationships, primarily meaning Dr. Edwards, to do what we do best, which is to get out of ourselves and serve. And so these last 2 weeks have been spent planning this webinar in addition to our full-time teaching responsibilities and family responsibilities. So that was what worked for me, but we have to find out what works for ourselves. But we know ourselves before the pandemic, so we know what we need, and but this time may require us to be creative because certainly there are some limitations. Physical activity. Now, this could be as simple as walking around the house, using light free weights. If you have them in the house, you could use cans of soup as free weights, or if you have more advanced gym equipment, how about pulling out an old school DVD or a VHS tape to bring back these, right? And do some aerobics. Or if you feel comfortable walking in the community, you can certainly do that too. Now, when it comes to eating healthy, we understand that it is completely natural to cope with food in this environment, but the goal for this is to survive, right? So we may not necessarily be able to prepare for our bikini bodies that we want to have for the summer, but we don't want to become unhealthy. So I think that to achieve pillar number 4, 2 tips that I know that have been very successful for me are meal planning and preparation. So here's where I have embraced what Angela Dawn, my colleague has taught my students and I for the last several years, the planning in advance, because I know myself. I know that weight loss and weight gain has been a struggle for me. And so if I don't stay on top of this, I'm going to come out of COVID-19 an unhealthy person. And then I'm not going to be pleased with that. And then risk avoidance. Forbes magazine published a dynamic article that focused on how, and dynamic in the sense of the information, bringing to us that Americans are overindulging in food, alcohol, marijuana, pornography during this time, again, to cope. And if there has been a struggle with addiction, all of the 12-step programs are holding meetings online and by phone. There's going to be 2 links to mental health resources available that we're going to send to you so that we can, again, be proactive in any area of weakness. 6, show up, dress up. When Dr. Edwards and Stacy and I came down to this meeting, they laughed because we had a pre-meeting before the webinar. And I stood up and I have on my heels. I have on my teacher outfit. Dr. Edwards told me you all can't see me, but let me show you all my flowers. I have a couple. I think Jasmine is on here, Sean McKay. This is how I would go to work, right? And I'm good for a ponytail. Now, this might not be as fresh as it would normally be if I could get to the salon, but the point is that this is my form of self-care. So I need to dress up and show up so that I can do my job. And this experience, this platform is an extension of what I do. And so I promise to myself, now I'm not putting on my robes every day. I might have on my sweatshirt and my yoga pants, but I'm showering and making sure that I'm practicing good hygiene, because it is tempting easy in this environment, but that's not going to help us to manage our mental health. And equally as important during this time, we have to manage our mental health the same way that we need to manage our physical health. And the last one, don't abuse prescription drugs. We have drugs in our homes, oftentimes prescription drugs, because we may have different ailments. And so again, looking within, doing those internal checks and seeking help if we need it is the key to really begin to roll out these 7 pillars of self-care.
And I am clicking.
It's okay.
Okay. Now, maybe I'll request once more so I can move forward.
I just did it.
Awesome. Okay.
So let me say this. Thursday, March 12th was my last day on campus. And this was a bittersweet day for me because it was the conclusion of an 8-week accelerated class. And I mean, I was over the moon excited because I love this group of kids. I had them last semester. And they took a developmental class with me last semester, and then their English 101 class. And I mean, and we were rolling, y'all. I mean, I invited Don, Mr. Peterson, my colleagues, they're on here tonight. And they came not to see me, but they came to see my students to do some dynamic PowerPoints. And the day was complicated because I had to go get my balloons, my snacks, okay, my tablecloths, because this was a celebration in spite of it all. And I said to myself that I don't have time to do a lot because we had received word that this was our last day on campus, period, for faculty. And I know what's important to me, and relationships are important to me. So I went into my office in the midst of getting the food together, making sure the technology was working, and I grabbed a positive reminder. So I got my first teaching job from my high school principal, the late Vincent L. Fisher. I have 2 pictures of he and I on my desk, and I didn't know what the next weeks, days, or months would entail, but I knew that if I had to work from home, I didn't need copies of my degrees. I didn't even need my favorite textbook. I to have a keepsake in my workspace that would give me strength, something that was positive. So I encourage you in your new environment to put something positive there, something that makes you feel good. And again, that's different for every person. Also, acknowledge what you're doing well. Small and big accomplishments, depending on where you are. Showering and dressing could be a major accomplishment worthy of celebration. Working to the best of your ability. We could have a day where technology fails us, and it really is okay, okay? Checking on loved ones. I have a 78-year-old mother, an 82-year-old father, and I know that I get locked in, but I'm in between classes and meetings. Hey, Ma, you all right? Dad, you need anything? And fortunately, my parents are very independent, and their extended family members, my cousin Linda is on here from Cleveland, Ohio. She might as well be my sister and not my cousin because my father just loves her and she loves him. So I'm very thankful for that support system to be able to get through this time, okay? And then give yourself credit. Where else can we go? We can go to the grocery store and we can prepare for these meals, because the only places that we can go right now is to the market. I'm calling it the market. I'm showing my age. And now I have made a few trips to the pharmacy, but I prefer the market to get my food. So again, these are things that are positive, but if you go to the market, the grocery store, or the pharmacy, make sure you have your mask and your gloves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're able and you're comfortable, participate in outdoor exercise. I have consulted with many experts about how is COVID-19 contracted. And I've been told that, 6 feet really isn't even enough. So I don't know the answers. I don't profess to be a medical professional. We're only sharing what the CDC has told us. But if you are comfortable walking outside or running outside, just make sure you have your glove and mask, because you just never know what may happen. And I absolutely love this bullet point, this last one, because as a human development professor, I really believe in being inclusive. YMCA has developed a program called YMCA 360 program. Write it down. We're going to send it to you, but write it down. YMCA 360 program is an online exercise program for children, teens, adults, and senior citizens. So at all levels, we can get some free exercise. So guess what? We have no excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Stay connected with positive colleagues and friends. I mean, this is very important because, again, the news can be so negative. Now, we have to get the facts, and it can feel negative. But one of the things that Dr. Edwards said to me early on when I was down, she said, Tanya, words have power. My god sister who's on here, Dr. Kellen Hodges, said, this too shall pass. And so while it's tempting to deal with the reality, I'm not suggesting that we be in denial, but it's also important that through it all, that we stay connected to those people that make us feel good. Different relationships feed us differently. Some relationships feed us, some relationships drain us, and maybe we cannot escape the relationships that drain us, but we certainly need to plug into those people by phone and email and text and Zoom, so we can stay sane, because we are going to be victorious over this experience, over these days. And again, setting appropriate boundaries. Even the sea has boundaries. The water is not overflowing into our communities, into our homes. So again, we want to have some boundaries. This last one, be proactive. Just check in with your insurance provider and find out if your primary care physicians and doctors that you regularly see are offering telemedicine appointment. I've had 2 telemedicine appointments since we've been online, and everyone that knows me, I have a history of sinus infections. Why did I get one 3 weeks into the pandemic? Well, I got one. Hopped online with my ENT, and he immediately, that was my trip to the pharmacy, but I went through the drive-through. So he called in my antibiotic. My point is, we want to control the things that we can control. And so if we just have regular issues that are minor, that we know that we have to maintain, we need to see our doctors, we just want to see what's available so that we can have a plan in place if we would to need to access them. And then if things become escalated or elevated, we want to know what's available to us before any crisis takes place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tanya, I can say that was one of the first things that we did because of Joshua's situation, because he had just gotten out of the hospital. That was one of the first questions we did, was we talked to the doctors about telemedicine. We talked to his physicians about making sure we had at least a 1 or 2 month supply. I even asked the physicians, okay, this is what they're saying on the news. What should we be doing? And, one physician said, we're going to be open. We'll make sure you get your prescriptions monthly. Another physician said, okay, we'll just go ahead and give you a 60-day supply. So that piece right there, knowing that we had, the telemedicine and this open line with our son's physicians, really kind of gave us some peace, because we knew with him having an autoimmune disorder at this point, we knew that we did not want to go to a hospital or even go to the doctor's office, so that it gave us some peace. So I think self-care is really key to helping us manage in this new normal. And whether it's, like you said, a small bit of self-care or something really large that you're committing to on a daily basis, the physical fitness, dieting, I think it's all important.
You're absolutely right. And it is one thing that we can control, believe it or not. I mean, these things, some of these examples are very simplistic ones, and maybe we only get one self-care tip in a day. We don't get all of them in, but again, that's worthy of celebrating. Setting an end time to the workday. I was honest, I shared with you all that I struggle with that, when to shut it off, but I'm working on that so that I can get adequate sleep. Read inspirational books and magazines. Amazon has become my best friend. I think I get packages all the time because I'm just really not comfortable going into the grocery store unless it's something that we really need. And then Barnes and Nobles. So, you know, so often many people enjoy reading, but we just don't have the time to do it when we have such busy lives. And this is a time where we can reconnect with some of our favorite pastimes and things that we love. And consider board games and movies for quality time with family. I said to my husband, I said, you know, I want to order Connect Four. Do you know how to play Connect Four? That was the game that I loved in childhood. So I'm going to be ordering Connect Four. So that's something that we can do on a Friday night or Saturday night. Consider the I don't want to say importance, but it is important. So let me backpedal that. Make a promise to yourself, for those of us who are tied to churches, to, even though it's so different, to participate in our online weekly church services and Bible studies. Sometimes there's a learning curve with the technology. Things may not work as well. Or consider dialing into Howard University's radio station and catching the Sunday service. And most important,
whatever that spiritual connection is, make the commitment to stay the course with that connection. I think that's extremely important. You hit a serious point there. I think it's important to be connected spiritually in whatever way that is for you.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, a lot of people are not comfortable talking about it, but if you really feel that you need you need emotional support, psychological support, this phone number here is the emergency line that came out of the state of New York. And there's a PDF file that we're going to send you that has a warm line directory where you can get help in every state in this country. And then we're also going to be sending you a list of vetted and approved therapists that Taraji P. Henson has established a mental health foundation named after her father. And she has a list of therapists who are providing free mental health services for those individuals who do not have any medical insurance. So, you know, it's just important to just take care of yourself so that we can come out of this. We're going to come out of this. And the last thing before I transition to Stacy, I just want to say that there is no more precious resource than your time. It's the one resource that we cannot get back. So we really thank you for being here with us tonight. And I pray that we can look back on this time period and say, I made it through. And that's why we did this. We wanted to just add a little sunshine to your day. So thank you so much for being with us. We love you and we appreciate you.
Professor Brown LLC has been putting out inspirational quotes in the last 2 weeks. And I just wanted to end my part on this part, just saying, quote from Maya Angelou, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." And as they both have said, there are resources out here for us during this pandemic. And I want you guys to use those resources. Also use your friends, because that's what friends are for. Not to sound cliche, but that's definitely what we are. I want to thank Dr. Francine Edwards and Professor Tanya Brown. A huge thank you to this informative presentation and your dedication to helping us work within this new unknown. I also want to say thank you so much to the participants. And because we're so thankful for your participation, you will receive our gift that's going to be coming in an email shortly after this presentation. So continue to follow us, continue to keep in connection with Dr. Francine Edwards as well as Professor Brown. If you have any questions or anything to follow up with, now is the time. I only see 2 questions here in the question and answer session.
No, they're all in the chat. They're all in the chat.
There's
a bunch
more
of
in the chat. Okay, very good. Because actually, I see hellos to Dr. Fran and hello to Professor Fran. Hello.
Hey, hey.
All right.
see
Let's see what we
hellos.
have.
I'm so appreciative. So there here. Oh wow. So Brenda Hartman. I just give people shout outs. My name is Brenda Hartman. I'm from Middletown, Delaware, and I teach 3rd grade in the Colonial School District. I learned about this webinar from my friend, Dr. Shelley Rouser. Yay, thank you both, thank you both. You guys stay on because we're going to send some, we're gonna do some drawings and do some giveaways. You know, you're at home, so we're gonna give away some e-gift cards that you guys can use. Let's see, Angela Don, she's in Baltimore. She's a therapist at a college working in overdrive with a 10-year-old. Oh, Angela, give it up for Angela. And she says she's thankful that she has a husband that isn't as overwhelmed with work from home as she is. So that's a good source of support. That's awesome. Danae Sewell. Hi, Danae. She's our, when I say an amazing director of our lab school, came in, and Tanya. So who's the colleague you kept referencing that is very good with plans and schedules?
Angela Dawn, the one that you just spoke about.
So Angela, Danae is our Angela. When I say the schedules, the creativity, the ideas, every time someone tries to figure out like, oh, I'm trying to organize to do this, I'm like, oh, you need to go see Danae. I send professors to her. I think that's one of the great things about this whole space that we're living in. I know it sounds crazy that I said this, being in a pandemic has opened the door to some great things. And Danae, type in, I don't remember when the governor decided to close all the lab schools and childcare centers unless you were serving not essential employees. But I would say within 48 hours, Dr. Rouser and Ms. Sewell had a complete online curriculum for our lab school. I was blown away. So would that have come if we weren't in this situation? You know, probably not. And so I think we really have to look at the silver lining and the good moments as we all navigate this together. Betty Cheney, Atlanta, no school.
Hey, Miss Cheney.
Hi, Miss Cheney, my secret technical reader. I think Dr. Rouser's here. She's a professor in the education department and 27-year educator. Did we do a good job, Dr. Rouser? Lynn,
Dr. Edwards, I see a question.
Do we have a question? Okay, I was reading.
I see a question from one
you
of
asked everybody to shout out where they were, so let's go to the question. Yes.
Oh no, you can keep shouting out, but I just wanted to see, is Dr. Hodges still on the line?
2 participants raising, and just you guys know this is all new. This is one thing we couldn't practice was the Q&A session. So y'all are learning with us live. Let's see. I hate to butcher names. Myra Sidnor asked, will this presentation be available to review if we miss part of the event? Oh, y'all did a wonderful job. Thank you. I missed some of it. Yes, so what we're gonna do is as soon as this is over, and I extended the time a little bit, as soon as it's over, we're gonna post the links on our Facebook pages. And then Ms. Hill, who's our Director of Community Relations, is going to send the link to all of our participants in the email. And then those of you who we do in the drawing, you'll be getting a email with your e-gift card if you're one of those winners. Is there another question?
Yes, the other question here is from Jasmine James. She says, do you have any advice for people who have to work with the COVID patients?
Tanya, take that one.
So that's why I was asking. I think she's still on the line.
Are you on the line,
Dr. Hodges? So I'm gonna, Jasmine, I'm gonna follow up with you privately because again, we are not medical professionals, but one thing that I have researched and read. So my husband is a first responder and he's still working through the pandemic. So some of the suggestions for physicians and first responders when they come home, it's literally almost a strip before you come in the house and immediately wash your hands and take a shower. So those are the suggestions. Okay, those are the suggestions that are given when you're transitioning to your home environment. So I do not feel comfortable, giving suggestions of what one would do when they're on the job, that's out of my area of expertise. But I'm getting you know how I am, Jasmine. I'm trying to get you an answer. So if we go to another question, I'm texting a medical professional, and I'll get right back to you.
Excellent.
And I'm going to shoot a Facebook message to a friend who is a psychologist to try to get some answers for you, because I do. My heart goes out, and I had to listen to what Professor Brown said about consuming the news, because, getting up every morning crying. I want to say thank you being on the front lines, Jasmine, for caring for people, for putting yourself at risk, because we know the PPE situation is not what it should be. And so I want to say thank you for that. I would encourage you to do what Professor Brown did say and reach out to your physicians, because I think you need to have a professional that you speak with. No one in this world besides other first responders and healthcare professionals can really truly understand what you're going through. And I think it's important for this country to do. I think it's great that we're putting hearts up. We live next door to a nurse, and so we have one of those heart lights and we shine it out on his house, but that's not enough. I think Dr. Hodges back on the line?
So I just text Stacy to see if Stacy can give her audio.
Okay.
Because I think everybody's on mute.
Right.
Okay. So we do have a healthcare professional on the line. So are we able to get her?
Let me switch this over, because I think you'll have the capabilities to change the status of the attendee.
I'm doing it right now. Kellen Hodges, allow to talk. There you go, Dr. Hodges.
Hi.
Okay, very good.
Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Lovely ladies. This has been a wonderful and inspiring webinar tonight. I took pictures of a couple of your slides because I want to sit back over a cup of tea and go back over this information. It was so uplifting in a time like this. So I think the question was, what are some of the health professionals doing to protect themselves? And I think
what advice do you have for individuals who have to work with the COVID patient?
So Dr. Hodges, this young lady, she works in a medical setting. She's one of my students and she works in a medical setting full-time, 12-hour shifts.
Okay, well, is her setting providing PPE or the personal protective equipment that combats, in transmission of infection? Because most of them should be. As you guys know, there's been a limited supply. There's a supply chain issue going on. But the protective equipment.
Jasmine's mic is open now, so you guys can talk.
Yeah, so I would be diligent to practice universal precautions and also use any personal protective gear that they give you. That includes the helmets, the gloves, the masks, the goggles, gowns even. So whatever things that you have available to you, use them. I actually had to take my husband to the hospital today for an allergy shot, which is deemed essential because, he can't miss this sequencing. And I was amazed to see some of the people in the hospital, the workers, without their protective gear on. The people admitting and taking temperatures and asking the questions, some of them had gloves on, some of them had a mask, some of them didn't, some had gowns. So I think, if you're in that setting, be diligent to use every resource available, because this is one of the most, communicative viruses we've encountered, and certainly one of the most lethal. So it's unfortunate that the communication, the information has been, so confusing over the past couple of months. But I would take every precaution available to me.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Jasmine.
Hi. Sorry if I'm talking so low. I'm at work and I got a mask on.
Oh, no, that's great.
So yeah, we are really limited on PPE. So we do have like the people coming to count how much PPE we use.
Yeah.
We have to reuse our face masks every shift. We got to put everything in a bag and reuse it, which we honestly we don't like it because we feel as though it's just the hygiene part. You got to wear this for a 12-hour shift and you got to use the same thing when you come back. So that's just nerve-wracking for us. And then I guess when they come in here, they're not on isolation, and then you're not wearing the proper PPE because they're not on the isolation, and then you come back 2 days later, now they're on a high risk for COVID. So it's really nerve-wracking.
Jasmine, do you have to have the N95 mask, or can you have the regular mask?
So when I walk, the whole time I'm not in a COVID patient room, I have to wear the regular yellow mask. But when I go in a COVID patient room, I have to wear the N95 and my face shield and a gown.
So would a mask like this be okay?
Yes, I have the yellow one on right now.
Okay, I'm gonna send you these, Jasmine.
Okay.
I really want to thank you for being on the front lines. My husband on the call, he's in federal law enforcement, he's on the front lines. And so he just gets a kick out of me because I'm always ordering stuff, but you message me through Canvas or email and send me your mailing address, and I'm going to talk to him and see how many out of these 50 that we can bless you with, because I believe that Dr. Hodges would agree that we probably don't want to be wearing the same mask every day. Is that right, Dr. Hodges?
Yes, that's true. I mean, and I want to thank you too. It's Jasmine.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Jasmine, thank you for just blessing the world with what you do every day and having the courage to do it, because you don't have to. So we appreciate you as a first responder. And yes, everything that we've been taught about infection control and hygiene in these medical workplaces is really pretty much out the window in this situation. And we are doing things like reusing masks and that kind of stuff. And so, but it's better than nothing. Just as a sideline, my husband actually is looking at ordering the CPAP machine and a UV light, and you can, it is a bit of an expense, but it might be something you consider. You can sterilize your own mask, and this unit is like $300, I think. And you can, I'm not sure how much time it takes to sterilize. It's like 5 minutes, and you can sterilize the masks in these little units. So
yeah, because now,
Dr. Hodges, are you talking about the UV light that we would see in the nail salon, or what kind of UV light are you talking about that you can order?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna see if I can pull it up. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up and maybe even tell you what the link is.
Okay.
because now with the CPAP and BiPAP machines, when a patient wears them at nighttime because of their sleep apnea, we actually have to wear N95 as long as the machine is on.
Oh.
Because they saying when it's on, it can contract COVID in the air.
Wow.
So
Wow.
normally before COVID, we didn't have to wear N95s in the rooms because it's for sleep. But now, being as the COVID is in the air, we have to wear N95s if the machine is on.
Yes, I hear you. So this would be something that you could have at home, if you wanted to sterilize some things or set aside in your workspace. And it's called a CPAP cleaner and sanitizer, ozone-free UV CPAP mask and accessory sanitizer.
Okay.
And so and it's in a bag. So this one is $149 on Amazon. So
Okay.
you might want to, look it up on Amazon, check it out, read about it. But it's an option, in this unprecedented situation of
Dr. Hodges,
Yeah.
can you send me that link? And
I sure will.
Dr. Edwards and I will figure
I-
out how we can bless Jasmine.
Thank you,
Absolutely. I
ladies.
sure will. And thank you again,
Thank you, Jasmine.
You're
I love you.
welcome.
And send me
Love you, Dr.
your
Brown.
message me your address, and I'll get a good portion of these masks to you. Okay.
I will. Thank you.
You're
God
welcome.
bless you.
Thank you.
I was gonna say,
Um,
go to the
I
chat.
know
We have a
we-
couple more comments also.
We have to say that again.
A couple more chats. There are a couple questions in the chat room or in
Do I
comments.
scroll all the way down?
Yep.
So Brenda Hartman said, Angela Don said also, don't be afraid to ask for help. People on the front lines need to do self-care more than anyone. Absolutely, I totally agree. Brenda Hartman said, when working with younger students elementary, what are your thoughts on reviewing materials during this time versus new instruction? And what are your thoughts on the amount of time to work with these students in an online platform? Is Danae on? Because I think because she teaches, even though she's in a lab school, she's getting kids ready for for kindergarten. So Danae, can I open your mic? Danae, are you there? Can you unmute? There we go. Hi. Can you share some of your insight with Ms. Hartman regarding how you do instruction?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that question for me one more time?
Okay, so when working with younger students, and in parens, she put elementary, what are your thoughts on reviewing material during this time versus new instruction? And what are your thoughts on the amount of time that you would actually work with younger students online? I think these are great questions.
Yes, absolutely, it is a good question. I think for myself and even our educators that are working with children who are actually 5 and under all the way to 1, the biggest thing that we're focused on is just trying to have that relationship and that connection, because this is a little bit of a traumatic time for them as well. The stress that their parents might be dealing with, them being in a new environment, which is home, in the context of them trying to learn in that environment as well. I think that it's definitely a balancing act of, you know, many of them have not had to look at a computer for hours on end. Let's take into consideration the research regarding screen time for them in general. So now that school is primarily online, reviewing it, wanting it to be, or encouraging it to be as interactive as possible and as out of the box as possible. Maybe not just sitting there and going over some of the things, but encouraging them to go around their house and find some things that, may align with what you're doing. I know this may seem really simple, but if it's math, then they get Cheerios, some cereal, and 2 Cheerios plus 2 Cheerios. Okay, who's eating their 4 Cheerios? Colors, going around their house, looking for something that's a different color, and then they can show on the screen. I think introducing new material, you're going to want to make sure that you partner with the parents so that that conversation can, in context, be happening with their parents as well, in a handed down in a way that is not adding stress to them to have to learn the full context of what to be able to teach their children. I think you take the steps that you need to take with the fact that this is, of course, a sensitive time for everyone at the forefront. So I wouldn't say to back off on introducing new material. I would say absolutely do it, but get your community, whether it's your co-teachers, whether it's utilizing resources like YouTube, TikTok, whatever might work for the dynamic of your students. Get the parents involved, making sure that there is that communication happening with them as well. Whether it's maybe a weekly phone call, just to say, hey, how is it going? I know that we've been doing these things, but how is it working out at home? And that's just my feedback.
Okay. Was that good, Brenda? Let me open you up, sorry. Brenda, you open?
Picture is not the link.
Brenda, are you open?
Yes, hello. Yeah, thank you very much. That was excellent. I work with 3rd graders, and one of the struggles that we're having right now is access. So our district has, done a device rollout for parents to come and get the computers
Mhm.
but it's still students being able to get on the computer from home because they don't remember logins or passwords or whatever, and parents are unfamiliar with it. So I appreciate what was just said, because we've spent a fair amount of time just doing like a morning meeting when we meet with our students to make them feel comfortable and talk about any issues and struggles they may be having. So I appreciate those thoughts about working with parents and taking time to be aware of your students' needs.
So
And if I
I'm
could
going to
add
go into parent. Oh, go ahead, Danae.
I was just going to say, this is such a great time to be as creative as possible. So something as small, one of our teachers was reading the book Pete the Cat, and it talked about this banana and mushy bananas. Well, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually mail a banana in the mail. You can mail a potato. So if you have, you know, a stamp, if you have your students' addresses, just finding a way for it to be creative. Imagine how funny that would be to have that conversation on Zoom where your children have all received their bananas in the mail, or, you know, something along those lines. So just not being afraid to be creative.
That's excellent. And one of the things that we were talking about today is just doing a Spirit Week online for
Yes.
our instruction.
Awesome.
Thank
So
you.
I had a question for both of you as the two educators, Brenda and Danae. So, and this is as a parent dealing with the elementary school. What type of engagement and support do you all have for parents who are at home working full time and who are unfamiliar with the processes like the new math? And I'm experiencing tons of click-throughs, and I'm sure other parents out there are experiencing that, where there's a bunch of different websites and different portals that you have to go to get to the work. What type of support are you giving for your parents?
Well, I can speak for my district and what we're doing. We do have online resources and how-tos for the parents to access. I myself personally use Class Dojo to send out messages to the parents. So I'll send a reminder about how to access our Zoom lessons and how to get online, and they can talk back with me as well. I also text all of my parents. I just found text, even though it is my personal number, tends to be a little bit easier for parents to communicate with me. So I don't mind that. You know, it's easy to have that conversation through text and through phone. And then we use Schoology. So in Schoology, there's lots of resources that we put up between the assignments and the directions and additional links to YouTube videos and whatnot. So there's.
Can I give you a hint about, well, you've given your number out now, but one thing that, when my husband's an educator too, and he just texted me, Tanya, he was like, come on, I'm a former firefighter. We're going to get Jasmine what she needs. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
Tell your husband I said thank you.
Listening, he's downstairs listening. So thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate you so much. But for those of you who want to connect with your families and you don't want to give your personal number out, what he did was created a Google phone number. And what I learned today at work when we were on one of our conference calls is that if you do it as a personal Google number, it's free. So I didn't know there was a charge to it.
Yeah, so I did that first. I used a Google number, and I was sending to each of my parents the link for our Zoom and the same message over and over. And Google suspended me because I looked like spam.
Okay, now we learned something else today. Okay, so.
So I had to change it up a little bit.
Yeah. I think the key is ultimately that we all have to do, use the resources that work best for us. I use Remind.com all the time to text my students. So it's just really what the educator is comfortable with.
So do we, any more questions, Stace?
I was just going to piggyback off of Brenda, with what she's doing, especially with us working with children who are 5 and under. We do have children who are families with siblings that are in the public school. And one of the things that I've just encouraged is being that connecting piece. So one of the things we say at the lab school is that if your child goes to school here, so does your whole family. So encouraging that multi-generational experience. So the grandparents who have been educators in the public school system are on those Zoom calls. When we're reaching out to parents to find out what some of their struggles have been, not being afraid to link them with, hey, I know so-and-so's grandmother, you know, she's been on the Zoom calls. She's a retired math teacher. Let me touch base with her. So making those connections, those interpersonal connections between the families, which would happen if they were coming to the school and seeing each other, you know, they would have those conversations at some of our events. But because that's not the case, not being afraid to be that intercession, that person in the middle to support their needs.
Awesome. And Sean McKay said in the chat, Google Voice is better for text. And I don't know, Sean, if are you using it? Because, you know, I didn't even know about getting kicked out because of it looking like spam. Let me see if Sean, yes, I can't find your name in the group, but she said, yes, it works for text and she's using it. So that might be another option. This is awesome because we're learning, we're sharing, and we're, as a bunch of educators, parents, friends, we're getting a lot of tools. So this is awesome. And Angela says, I use it and I like it.
Okay.
So that's awesome.
Is Angela still on the
Yes.
car? Can you bring her in?
Angela. All right, there you go.
So are there any questions specifically? So Angela Dawn is my colleague. She's a clinical social worker. Are there any questions surrounding mental health? Because as Stacy said in the introduction, I'm a professor of psychology, but she's a clinician. So she's working on the front lines in a very different way. So are there any questions that we might have surrounding depression, anxiety, fear, frustration, addiction, anything that we want to throw out there while we have her still on the line that someone wants to type? So Angela, you wrote in the chat that the first responders need to definitely practice self-care and probably at a more intensified level. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
I think that a lot of time, I think self-care, asking for help is a huge part of self-care that we don't really think about. And so sometimes it's asking your colleague to, you know, take over for, 15 minutes. Sometimes it's calling in sick, even though that's really tough to do on these days. But sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. Sometimes you have to ask your partner to make you dinner when you get home, or ask a neighbor to go grocery shopping for you, or different things like that. We really need to use the resources that we have. And a lot of times in this society, we don't ask for help from other people. But I think nowadays that people really want to help others. And so it might make asking for help a little bit easier.
And I think we see that. I mean, I'm just so touched by the fact that Jasmine spoke up about what she needed in a matter of seconds. Dr. Hodges found the resource for us, and then Micah stepped in and said, we're going to get it for her. So this is what this is really all about. I have a question for you, Angela. Shannon from Delaware says, one of my children is obsessed with the death toll. I fear that he and others will become very paranoid and anxious in this aftermath. How can we help them to not be fearful?
Well, I think number one, make sure that they don't get exposed to the news, and really watch what they're looking at on social media and things like that, because that can just compound the negativity and the fear. And then just talking to them about their fear, asking them, well, what makes you scared? They may be so afraid that grandma's going to die or something like that, and talk about it. And they can draw out their feelings, because they often don't know how to identify feelings. So you can even just have them learn about what feelings mean. It's not just angry, sad, afraid. There's deeper feelings that's kind of like the iceberg, and then there are deeper feelings that go underneath that. And just having those conversations, age appropriately, I think can be really, really helpful. And like Dr. Edwards talked about soft skills, that's kind of soft skills too, is how do we manage our emotions, how do we talk about emotions so that they are just a little bit more aware? But you've got to shut off that news. You know, you don't need to expose them to it. It doesn't mean that they don't need to know what's going on, because they do need some age appropriate information. Why are we not in school? Why is mom home all the time? You know, they need some information, but sometimes you just have to be the parent and say, we're not watching this tonight.
Thank you, Angela. Any other questions for Angela? Do we have any? Go ahead.
I would say one more thing about the fear, also normalizing it, and even saying, you know, sometimes I'm scared too. And letting your children see your emotions sometimes can be, if you are your child's biggest role model. So by being able to be vulnerable in front of them appropriately, I think can be really beneficial for them for the rest of their life.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have extended our webinar, so we're going to take it to 8:30. So and we're so glad that you guys stayed on with us. You guys are
Thank
amazing.
you.
Absolutely.
If there's any more questions before we wrap up, I think, Stacy, do you have our winners ready?
I sure do. Okay.
I sent you a text message.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I just sent you a text before she gives a text
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
on your phone.
I got you.
Mm,
We're using all kinds of
Not
technology.
able-
It's on my house. I'm surprised the room doesn't blow up. It's
got to.
computer,
Not able to share my
cell
screen.
phone, iPad, and so much stuff going on in here. So give you back control.
Not able to share my screen. Right.
So we
So you ask for permission, and I'll give it back to you while Tanya's talking.
So we came together as a team when we were doing our run-throughs, and we really decided that we wanted to be a blessing, not just with our knowledge and our experience, but that we just, again, wanted to add some sunshine to your days. So each of you all will receive a follow-up email within the next 2 minutes that has downloadable freebies, links to resources, but there are 10 winners who will receive $25 gift cards, and the names are coming up. These were just randomly selected, and you will receive these gift cards by email.
I'm trying to screen share to, I'm just going to give you the screen, Stacy, and then you can control the screen.
Okay.
Did it share? So let me
Sure
go to
did.
remote control and I guess ask for it back, and then you can share the
Gotcha.
screen.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. And let's see. Interesting.
Drum roll.
Right.
It's
So
just
I'm
waiting
actually still
here.
in your computer trying to share with what you have. I'm not able to pull up my screen independently from what's here now.
So I guess I will give you.
Or I can read the names.
Sounds
We have
great.
such a pretty slide. Okay.
Look here, everybody. Here is our slide.
No, actually,
Tanya, that's Stacy's.
Right.
So
if you look in our text, I have the new names.
Yeah. She has
Yes.
the name.
Okay,
Or I could call them. I mean, you see them in our text.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, all right. Our 10 winners are Jasmine James, Dr. Kellen Hodges, Brenda Hartman, Danae Sewell, Linda Smith Peterson, Myra Sidnor, Natasha Harris, Shayna Williams, Sean McKay, and Winnie Breakley.
All right.
Guys, you won. Congratulations.
So we'll be sending you all of these emails. The first round of emails you'll get momentarily. The gift cards you'll get within the next 24 hours. We thank you for the gift of your time. Thank you so much for being with us. God bless you. We love you and we thank you. And we will see you next time. Stay tuned for our
Thank you.
webinar.
All right.
Yes,
Stay safe.
be well and enjoy your families. If you're home with kids, hug your kids, hug your spouse, hug your partner. And we look forward to sharing with you sometime in the near future. Thank you.